They saved one human. Years later, humanity came back with an armada. The alarm screamed through my ship before I could even set down my cup of broth. Red lights flashed across every wall of the medical bay, and my 3 hearts pounded hard against my chest. I dropped everything and ran to the command deck. My captain was already there, his long gray fingers flying across the control panel. "What is it?" I shouted over the noise. "Unknown object," he said without looking at me. "Tiny, dead in space. It just drifted into our scanner range." I looked at the screen. A small piece of metal floated in the dark, spinning slowly. It was no bigger than a lifeboat. Its shape was wrong, rough, ugly, not made by any species we knew. "Life signs?" I asked. The captain tapped the screen twice. His eyes narrowed. "One, barely. My name is Vectel Wren." In that moment I was only 20 cycles old, fresh from the medical academy, and this was my first deep space mission. I had dreamed of adventure. I had dreamed of saving lives on far worlds, but I had never dreamed of this. "Sir," said our pilot, an older officer named Tellan, "the object is moving closer. I can lock a tractor beam on it." The captain stayed silent for a long moment. His face turned hard. "Leave it." "Sir," I asked. "I said leave it, Wren. That shape, that metal, do you not recognize it? It is human." The word hit the room like a cold wind. Everyone froze. I felt my throat go dry. Humans. I had only read about them in training files. A small species from a world called Earth. Young, weak. Their planet had been attacked and destroyed by another species called the Krellans only about 40 cycles ago. The Conquered had written them off. Extinct, the files said. A sad footnote in galactic history. And now one of them was drifting right beside our ship. "Captain," I said carefully, "if there is a living being in there, protocol says we must help. It is our duty. Protocol also says we do not interfere with failed species," the captain replied. His voice was sharp. "Do you want to bring trouble onto this ship? The Krellans still patrol these borders. If they find a human here, they will come for us too." "Sir, he is dying. I can see the life signs falling even now." The captain turned away from me. "Then he will die. That is not our problem." I stood there, my blood hot, my fists tight. I looked at the little object on the screen. Whoever was inside had no idea a ship was floating beside them. They had no idea that salvation was seconds away, and that salvation was about to turn around and leave. I could not do it. I could not walk away. "Sir, I am asking for permission to bring him aboard. As the medical officer, I am responsible for any life in range. If you deny me, I will file a report with the Conquered Medical Council." The captain turned slowly to face me. His eyes were cold. The whole command deck was silent. I think even the lights seemed to dim. He stared at me for what felt like forever. "You young fool," he said at last. "Fine, bring him in, but he is your burden. If anything goes wrong, it is on your head." "Yes, sir," I said quickly. I ran to the lower deck before he could change his mind. My heart was racing. I had never disobeyed an order before. I had never stood against a captain, but something inside me would not let me turn away. The tractor beam pulled the small pod into our loading bay. I stood there in my medical suit, waiting. The pod hissed as the doors opened and a cloud of foul air rolled out. The smell was terrible. Burnt metal, blood, something else, sweet and wrong. Then I saw him. He was small, thinner than any living being should be. His skin was gray and cracked from radiation burns. One of his arms was missing below the shoulder, wrapped in a dirty cloth. His eyes were closed. His chest barely moved. But in his one good hand, pressed tightly against his chest, he held a small flat object, a data slate. His grip was so strong that even in near death, he would not let it go. I knelt beside him. "Hello," I whispered in the common tongue. "Can you hear me? You are safe now." He did not answer, but his lips moved. I leaned closer. "John," he whispered, just that one word, "John." I did not know if that was his name or a prayer or the name of someone he had lost, but I decided then and there that I would call him John. I scooped him up in my arms. He weighed almost nothing. For the next 10 days I did not sleep much. I treated his burns. I replaced his lost blood with a substitute I had to design from scratch because no one on our ship had ever studied human biology. I fed him through tubes. I cleaned his wounds. I spoke to him softly, even when I did not know if he could hear me. The rest of the crew avoided the medical bay. I think they were afraid of him, afraid of what his presence meant. The captain never visited. He only sent cold messages asking for daily updates. On the 11th day, John opened his eyes. They were blue, a clear, bright, shining blue like the oceans of my homeworld. He looked at me, and for a long moment he did not move. Then his dry lips curled upward in what I later learned was called a smile. "Thank you," he whispered in his own language. I did not yet know the words, but I understood. In the weeks that followed, John grew stronger. He learned our language quickly. He was sharper than I had expected, much sharper. I began to realize that the files about humans had been wrong, or at least incomplete. He told me stories of his world, green forests, blue oceans, cities full of light. He told me about his wife and his small daughter, both gone. He told me about the day the sky turned to fire. He told me these things without tears. His tears had dried up long ago. And he taught me a game. He called it chess. We made the pieces from scraps of metal. Every evening after my shift we would sit and play. He always won. I did not mind. "Why do you help me?" he asked me one night as we sat across from the chessboard. I thought for a long time before I answered. "Because you are alive," I said, "and because no one deserves to be alone at the end." He nodded slowly. His eyes grew wet. He placed his one hand on mine. "Vectel," he said, "there are very few of us left, very few, but we are not gone, not yet. And if you are kind to me, you are kind to all of us." I did not know what he meant, not really, not then. 2 months after I saved him, John grew very weak again. His body had been too broken for too long. Even my best treatments could not hold back what was coming. He knew it before I did. On his last night he called me to his side. His breathing was shallow. His eyes looked tired. He pressed the data slate into my hand, the one he had been holding when we found him, the one he had never let anyone else touch. "Keep this safe," he whispered. "Do not open it. Do not give it to your leaders. Just keep it. Hide it. Promise me." "John, what is on it?" "Everything," he said softly. "All of us. Every voice, every memory, every song. It is my people, and one day they will come looking for it." "Your people are gone, my friend." He smiled, that strange, tired human smile. "No, Vectel, we are never gone. We just go quiet for a while." He squeezed my hand one last time. "Do not let us be forgotten." And then, just like that, he was gone. I sat beside him for a long time. I did not cry in the way his people cried. My species grieves differently, but I felt something crack inside me that night, something that would never fully heal. I took the data slate. I wrapped it in cloth. I hid it under a loose panel in my quarters. I told no one, not the captain, not my friends, no one. When we returned to the Central Worlds, I gave my official report. 1 human found, 1 human lost, no items of value recovered. The captain signed it without reading. The Conquered filed it away and forgot. But I did not forget. I kept my promise. I carried that small flat object through the rest of my career, from post to post, from world to world, for decades. I never opened it. I never told a soul. And slowly, very slowly, I began to understand that something was coming. Something that had started the moment I had refused to let a dying stranger drift away into the black. I just did not know yet how big it would become. The years passed and my life moved forward in small, quiet steps. I was promoted to senior medical officer, then to station commander, then to a teaching role at the Concord Medical Academy. I got married. I raised 3 children. I taught them to play chess just as John had taught me. I never told them where the game had come from. My hair turned silver. My hands grew slower. My eyes needed correction lenses. The galaxy spun on, busy and uncaring. The conquered argued with its neighbors. Trade routes opened and closed. Wars flared up on distant borders and were forgotten within a season. The Krellins grew stronger and meaner. They took 3 more worlds from smaller species, and no one stopped them. Life as it does simply continued. But I kept the slate. It sat in a steel box under the floor of my study, untouched, wrapped in the same cloth I had used all those years ago. Sometimes I would take it out late at night when my family was asleep and just hold it. I never turned it on. I had promised. But I would sit there in the dark, feeling its weight, wondering what lay inside. It was around my 40th year after the rescue that the first strange story reached my ears. I was at a conference on a frontier world called Belsar 9. Doctors from across the Conquered had gathered to discuss new medical techniques. During the evening meal, I sat with an old friend named Doran, who had spent his career on the Outer Rim. He leaned in close as the main lights were dimmed, and he spoke quietly. "Vectel," he said, "have you heard the stories from the border?" "Which border?" "The far border, near the old human exclusion zone." I felt something cold brush against my spine. "What stories?" Doran glanced around before speaking. Ships moving in the dark. Krellin patrol vessels have gone missing, 3 in the last year alone. No distress calls, no debris, just gone as if they had been swallowed whole. And mining crews out there say they see lights, strange lights, moving in patterns. I kept my face calm. Pirates, perhaps. Perhaps, but no pirate group has ever taken down a Krellin warship and left nothing behind. Not one bolt, not one piece of metal. I said nothing. I sipped my drink slowly. Inside, my mind was racing. A few months after I returned home, I heard another story. A trader on a backwater moon had seen a signal on his long-range scanner. A simple beep, then another, then another. It was counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on and on up to 10, then starting again. He played the recording for my son, who worked in the trade office. My son laughed it off. Some glitch, probably. But when I heard it, my blood ran cold, because I knew that counting pattern. I had heard John use it long ago when he had been teaching me human numbers. Base 10. The system humans used. A simple, beautiful, steady count. Someone was broadcasting. Someone was saying, without words, "We are here." I did not tell my son. I did not tell my wife. I did not tell anyone. That night I took the slate out of its hiding place. I held it in my old hands. I turned it over and over. My thumb hovered above the power button. I wanted so badly to turn it on, to see what John had carried, to understand. But I had promised him, and a promise made to a dying man is not a small thing. I put it back. A year later, an even stranger report came through official channels. A Conquered patrol ship had been investigating reports of missing miners in a remote star system. They found nothing. No bodies, no wreckage, but they did find a small object floating in space. It was a stone. A smooth, round stone, roughly the size of a fist. Carved into one side of it was a symbol. A tree, a simple tree, with deep roots and tall branches. The scientists were baffled. The Conquered decided it was a trick, a prank, perhaps, or a strange rock polished by natural forces. They filed the report and moved on. But I remembered something John had told me, one cold evening as we played chess. "On my world," he had said, "when someone is lost, we plant a tree. The roots hold the past. The branches reach for the future. Even after everything else is gone, the tree remembers." I sat in my chair for a long time after reading that report. They were leaving markers. Someone somewhere was leaving markers across the galaxy. Little signs, little messages, not loud enough for the Conquered to notice, but loud enough if you were listening. I began to look for them myself, quietly, carefully. I paid for access to shipping logs. I read border patrol reports. I traded old medical favors for small pieces of information. And slowly, a map began to form in my mind. Incidents in dozens of systems. Ships vanishing, always Krellin, always near their old conquest worlds. Strange lights, strange signals, strange objects. It was not random. It was a pattern. It was a tide moving slowly through the galactic dark, too vast to be seen all at once, but real. Very, very real. I tried once to bring my findings to the Conquered. I was 85 cycles old by then. Retired, respected, I thought they would listen. I went to the council chamber on the capital world. I stood before 5 senior officials and I told them everything. The missing patrols, the counting signals, the tree symbols, my belief that humanity was not extinct, my belief that something was coming. They laughed. Not cruelly, just tiredly, the way old officials laugh at old men who see patterns in the stars. "Dr. Wren," said the lead counselor, "we appreciate your service, but humanity was destroyed almost 50 cycles ago. 40,000 souls at most, scattered across poor colony ships. No species rebuilds itself from such small numbers. It is simply not possible." But the evidence with respect is a handful of ghost stories. Pirates, border criminals, rocks. Your imagination has run away with you. Please go home, rest, spend time with your grandchildren. I left the chamber without another word. On the shuttle ride home, I stared out the window at the stars. I was not angry. I was sad. Sad that the leaders of my people could not see what was right in front of them. Sad that they had forgotten what John had once told me so long ago. We are never gone. We just go quiet for a while. The quiet was ending. I could feel it. In my final years of quiet waiting, I did 2 things that turned out to matter very much. First, I continued to teach chess. My grandchildren loved the game. They taught their friends. Their friends taught others. Slowly, quietly, chess spread across 3 sectors of conquered space. It became a fashion. Young officers played it between shifts. Merchants played it on long trade routes. Children played it in schoolyards. None of them knew that every move, every piece, carried the memory of a small, scarred man who had died in my arms. Second, I began to write. I wrote down everything. Every detail I remembered about John, every word he had said, every story he had told. I filled 20 books with my memories, and I stored them beside the slate in my secret steel box. I did not know why exactly, only that someone someday might want to know. On my 92nd cycle, I sat on the balcony of my home, drinking warm tea, watching the sun set over the golden hills of my homeworld. My wife had passed 3 years before. My children visited often, but I was mostly alone now, and I did not mind. I had my memories. I had my garden. I had my chessboard. That evening, as the stars came out, I thought about John. I thought about how, all those years ago, I had made a choice. A small choice, to save one stranger, just one. I thought about how my captain had been so sure it was a mistake. And I thought about how wrong he had been. Because even then, on that quiet evening, something was moving in the deep dark. Something vast, something patient, something that had been building itself for 2 long generations in silence and shadow. It was coming home, and I was about to see it with my own eyes. The morning the sky went dark, I was trying to remember where I had put my walking stick. I was 94 cycles old by then. My joints ached. My eyes were tired, but my mind was still sharp, and I had plans that day to visit the market in the valley below my home. I was looking for my stick, grumbling to myself, when the light in the room suddenly changed. It was not a cloud. Clouds move slowly. This was fast, too fast. The warm orange light of morning turned gray in an instant, then almost black. I walked out onto my balcony slowly, leaning on the wall for support. And I looked up. My breath stopped. The sky was full of ships. Not a few, not a dozen, not 100. Ships beyond counting, black and silver, stretching from one horizon to the other. Some were smaller than houses, some were larger than mountains. A few were larger than anything I had ever seen built by any species. They hung in the air above my world in perfect, silent formation, like a great iron forest had grown overnight in the heavens. On the side of every ship, painted in pale blue and white, was the same symbol. A small round world, blue and green, wrapped in two curved branches like arms holding something precious. Earth. My teacup fell from my hand. I did not hear it break. My old heart was pounding so hard I thought it might stop. I gripped the railing and tried to breathe. I had been waiting for this moment for decades, but now that it was here, I could barely believe it. Across the valley, alarms began to wail. My communicator buzzed on my belt, flashing with urgent messages. Emergency broadcasts filled every channel. Defense platforms across the continent powered up, their great guns aimed at the sky. And then, one by one, the defense platforms went dark. Not destroyed, just turned off. As easily as I might blow out a candle, their lights faded, their alarms stopped, their great guns lowered. Across the Concord, I later learned, the same thing was happening on every world, on every station, on every ship. Our defenses, built over centuries, were being switched off by an invisible hand. Not damaged, not attacked, just politely disabled, as if a parent had reached into a room full of shouting children and quietly turned off the lights to make them stop yelling. Whoever these humans were now, they were not the humans I had known. Then the voices came. A single message began to play on every communicator, every public screen, every emergency channel in every language the Concord used. It was not one voice. It was many voices layered together. Men, women, old, young, speaking as one. We come for our brother. We come for the one who was kind to us. Stand down and no harm will come to you. We are not here for war. I stood frozen on my balcony, staring up at that impossible fleet. The message played 3 times, then silence. Then slowly a single ship began to descend from the vast Armada, a smaller one, smooth and silver, shaped like a drop of water. It came straight down toward my home, toward my balcony, as if it knew exactly where to go. Because it did. I took a step backward. My old hands shook. For one wild moment I thought about running inside, locking the door. But where would I run? The sky was full of them. The ground beneath me belonged to them now, whether anyone admitted it or not. So I stood there, a small old man in a worn gray robe, waiting. The ship settled on my balcony as lightly as a leaf. A door opened in its side and warm golden light spilled out. 2 figures stepped down. They were tall, much taller than I had expected. John had been small and thin, but these 2 were strong and straight, their bodies moving with an easy grace. They wore dark uniforms with silver trim. Their faces were calm. Their eyes were bright. The one in front was a man. He was young, maybe 40 in human years. He had dark hair and a sharp jaw, and when I looked at his face, my breath caught again. He looked so much like John that I nearly fell. He must have seen it in my eyes because his mouth softened into a small, respectful smile. He stepped forward and bowed. Not a small nod. A full, deep bow, the kind you give to someone important. The woman beside him did the same. Dr. Vectel Wren of Clan Mornth, healer of the Meridian, he said in my own language, clearly and slowly. It is an honor beyond words. I tried to speak. My voice came out cracked. You know my name. We know everything about you, sir, he said gently. My great-grandfather spoke of you until the last day of his long life. My grandmother taught my mother. My mother taught me. You were the first story I ever learned as a child. Before I learned to walk, I knew your name. My legs almost gave out. The woman reached forward quickly and took my arm, holding me up. Her grip was strong but careful, as if she were afraid I might break. Please, doctor, she said, sit, you are trembling. They led me to my old chair. I sat down heavily. I could not take my eyes off the man's face. "Who are you?" I whispered. "My name is Daniel," he said. He pointed to the woman. "This is my sister, Claire. We are the great-grandchildren of the man you saved, the man you called John. His full name was John Ellery. He was my ancestor." "John had children?" I asked, confused. "But he told me his family was gone." Daniel nodded slowly. "His first family, yes, his wife, his first daughter, lost with Earth. But before he flew into the dark before the attack, he had donated genetic samples, as many of our people did in those terrible months. When our ships found safe harbor, those samples were used. He had 3 sons and 2 daughters who never knew his face. From those 5, by now, there are more than 40,000 of us in his direct line." I put my hand over my mouth. My eyes grew wet. "And how many of you are there in total?" I asked quietly. "All humans everywhere." Daniel and Claire looked at each other. Claire's eyes were soft. "Doctor," she said, "we will tell you everything. We have come a very long way to tell you, but perhaps first we should go somewhere safe. Your leaders are frightened. They will soon come here looking for you to learn what we want. We would prefer to answer their questions on our terms, with you beside us." I looked at her. I looked at Daniel. I looked at the vast armada hanging above my home. "Will you hurt my people?" I asked, "if I come with you?" Daniel knelt down so his eyes were level with mine. He placed one of his large hands over my small old one. "Dr. Wren," he said, "we have come back for 2 reasons. One is to thank you. The other is to do something we have been preparing for 2 long generations. But neither of those things involves hurting your people. You have my word. And our word, sir, is a very heavy thing." I looked into his blue eyes, John's eyes, and I believed him. I nodded slowly. "Wait," I said, "before we go I must get something." I hobbled into my study. I knelt painfully on the old wooden floor. I opened the hidden panel. I lifted out the steel box. I unwrapped the cloth. And I took out the slate. The same slate John had pressed into my hand on his last night, almost 70 cycles ago. When I carried it back onto the balcony, Daniel saw it. His face went pale. Claire put her hand over her mouth. "You kept it," Daniel whispered. "You actually kept it all this time." "I promised," I said simply. Daniel reached out with shaking fingers and touched the edge of the slate. Then he looked at me, and for the first time, a tear slid down his cheek. "Doctor," he said softly, "that slate holds the genetic and historical archive of our entire species. Every song, every book, every face, every memory of Earth. If we had lost it, we would have rebuilt our bodies, but we would never have rebuilt our soul. You kept our soul safe for 70 cycles. You kept it hidden when your own leaders would have taken it, studied it, sold it. You kept your word to a dying stranger." He bowed again. This time he stayed bowed for a very long time. "The galaxy does not yet know what you have done for it," he said, "but it will." They helped me stand. They guided me gently into their small silver ship. As the doors closed, I looked back at my home one last time. My garden, my chessboard still set up on the table, my teacup broken on the stone floor. I did not know if I would ever see those things again. But as the ship rose up into the darkened sky, I felt no fear. I felt only wonder, and something else, something I had not felt in many years. I felt that a very old promise was finally being kept. The ship carried me up into the heart of the great Armada, and as we rose, I pressed the slate against my chest, just as John had done on the day I first pulled him out of the cold. The dark was ending. Something new was about to begin, and I was going to see it with my own 2 eyes. They brought me to the largest ship. It was so big that my mind could not measure it. From the outside, it looked like a small moon, with cities on its surface and lights glowing from 1,000 windows. Daniel told me its name was the Ashes of Eden. I asked him why that name. He said, "Because from the ashes of our lost garden, we grew something new." The inside was nothing like any ship I had ever seen. The Concord builds its ships like tools: cold hallways, gray walls, efficient, useful, empty. But the inside of this human ship felt like a living place. There were long gardens with real trees growing in them, their branches bending in the soft artificial breeze. There were rivers, small ones, winding through the decks with fish swimming in the clear water. There were halls with painted ceilings showing scenes from old Earth, and libraries with shelves that stretched up farther than I could see. It did not feel like a warship. It felt like a traveling world. Daniel and Claire walked beside me the whole time. They moved slowly so my old legs could keep up. Humans greeted us as we passed. Some bowed their heads. Some placed their right hands over their hearts. Some whispered my name to their children and pointed at me with quiet smiles. Old faces, young faces, all looking at me as if I were a figure out of a storybook. I felt strange. I had been a simple doctor my whole life. I had never wanted glory. And yet here I was, walking through a miracle, being treated like a hero. "Doctor, would you like to meet our admiral?" Daniel asked gently after a while. "Yes," I said, "I would." They led me through a tall set of doors into a wide, round room at the heart of the ship. It had windows on every side, and through them I could see the stars and the bright blue curve of my homeworld far below. In the center of the room stood a tall woman. She was maybe 60 in human years. Her hair was short and silver. Her skin was dark and her eyes were a deep, sharp gray. She wore a simple uniform with a single golden star on her collar. She did not look cruel, but she also did not look soft. Her whole body carried a quiet strength, the kind that comes from carrying heavy things for a long time. When she saw me, she walked toward me quickly, and then, to my surprise, she went down on one knee. "Dr. Wren," she said. Her voice was low and warm. "I am Admiral Margaret Kane, commander of the 2nd Returning Fleet. It is the honor of my life to stand in your presence." I did not know what to say. I fumbled for words. "Please, Admiral, stand up. I am only an old doctor." She stood slowly. Her gray eyes held mine. "You are not only a doctor, sir. You are the reason we exist. You are the reason any of us are here at all. Please come, sit. There is much we want to tell you, and I believe you have waited a long time to hear it." She guided me to a comfortable chair by a long window. A human servant brought me warm broth, made exactly the way my species likes it. I held the cup in my shaking hands and I listened. And for the next several hours, Admiral Kane told me the story of humanity. "When Earth was lost," she began, "there were roughly 40,000 of us left, spread across about 60 small colony ships and old research stations. Some had been on long missions. Some had been in the outer system when the attack came. We were scattered, frightened, hungry, and the galaxy had already forgotten us." She paused, looking out the window at the stars. "We gathered what we could. We met in secret ship by ship in the empty space at the edge of our former territory. The first leaders of our scattered people had a hard choice to make. Some wanted to hide forever. Some wanted revenge right away. Some wanted to beg the conquered for help. But one woman, a captain named Ruth Callahan, said something that changed everything. She said, "We will not beg. We will not waste our small strength on anger. We will go into the dark places no one wants, and there we will grow. And when we are ready, and only when we are ready, we will return." Kane's eyes softened. "So we went into the hollow." "The hollow?" I asked. "I do not know that word." "It is a region near the rim of the galaxy," she said. "A huge dead zone. The elder races long ago fought a great war there, millions of years before any of our species existed. They left behind traces of strange energy, damaged stars, broken worlds. Nothing with sense goes there. It is considered unlucky. Cursed, some say. And you went there on purpose." "We had nowhere else. If we hid in the known galaxy, the Krellans would find us and finish us. So we took our 40,000 souls, we boarded our broken ships, and we flew into the place no one else wanted." She smiled faintly. It turned out to be the best choice we ever made. I leaned forward. Why? Because the hollow is not dead, Doctor. It only looks dead. Deep inside it, we found 3 habitable worlds hidden behind walls of radiation. We found elder machines, abandoned but still working, which we slowly learned to understand. We found new kinds of energy, new kinds of metal, new ways of building. We did not just survive there, we thrived. She took a breath. Her voice grew steady. We worked for generations. We taught our children that they were not orphans, they were builders. They were not the end of a story, they were the beginning of a new one. We fixed our bodies. We rewrote our illnesses. We extended our lives. Today, a healthy human can live 300 years or more. We learned to sleep in cold sleep for decades and wake up ready to work. We learned to speak with machines as friends. We learned to remember our history, and we told it to every child, over and over again. Her eyes met mine. And in every version of every story, Doctor, you were in it. A young alien doctor who saved a broken man, a kind heart in a cruel galaxy. The proof, we told our children that we were not alone, that the universe was not only full of those who hated us, that mercy existed, that hope was not a lie. I looked down at the broth in my hands. I did not know what to say. Do you understand what that meant to us? Kane continued softly. In our hardest years, when our children died of radiation, when our ships broke down, when the cold sleep failed, we told your story. We said, if one of them could be kind to one of us, then we can be strong for one another. Your kindness became the light we walked by. She stood up and walked to the window. 40,000 became 400,000 in the first century. 400,000 became 4 million in the second. By the time I was born, we were more than 400 million, spread across 1,000 hidden worlds inside the hollow. Our fleet has been building for the last 40 years. And now, we are more than 1 billion. I nearly dropped my cup. 1 billion, I whispered. 1 billion and growing, she said. All of us taught the same history. All of us taught the same promise. That one day when we were strong enough, we would come home. That we would answer the Krellins who destroyed our world, that we would repay every kindness and answer every unkindness, and that we would find the one alien who had saved the one man who had carried our archive across the void, and we would kneel before him, and we would thank him properly. She turned to look at me. Her gray eyes were wet now. That alien, Dr. Wren, is you. I sat in silence for a long time. Tears slid down my wrinkled face. I had not cried in many cycles, but I cried now. And John, I asked finally, did you know him, really? Kane smiled. My great-great-grandfather knew him when they were both very young. John Ellery was one of the last captains of the old Earth Deep Survey. When the attack came, he had been assigned to carry the genetic archive, our most sacred cargo. He fled with it in a small lifeboat. His ship was struck. He was wounded. He drifted for many weeks. He should have died alone in the dark. He did not, because a young doctor saw him and refused to look away. She came back to her chair and sat across from me. Doctor, we have a gift for you. But first, we must tell you why we have come back now and what we intend to do, because it will not all be gentle. And we want you to know before anyone else so that you can make your peace with it. Tell me, I said. She took a slow breath. We have come back to meet the Krellins. A cold feeling moved through my body. What will you do to them? Not what you fear, she said quickly. Not what your history books would expect. We have thought about this for 2 full generations. Every plan, every option. We are not coming as they came to us. We will not burn their world. We will not harm their children. We will not take revenge in the old way. Then what? We will end their empire, Kane said simply. We will disarm every Krellin warship. We will dissolve their military. We will remove their leaders who gave the order to destroy Earth, and we will put them on trial before a galactic court. And then, Doctor, we will rebuild their worlds. We will feed their hungry. We will teach their children. We will heal their sick. We will leave every Krellin planet better than we found it. And we will stay as quiet guardians, until the next 3 generations have grown up knowing that cruelty is a choice, and a choice that carries real cost. I stared at her. "You will be kind to them," I whispered, "after what they did." She nodded slowly. "We could destroy them, Doctor, tomorrow, easily. We have the power. But we decided long ago that if we used that power to become them, then they would have one after all. They would have turned us into their own image, and we refused to let that happen." Her voice grew soft. "We decided to become something else, something they did not expect. We decided to become better, and the seed of that choice, Doctor, was you. A stranger who chose kindness when he had every reason to choose safety. If you had looked away, we might have become monsters. You taught us, without ever knowing it, that the answer to cruelty is not more cruelty. It is strength with an open hand." I could not speak. I could only sit there and let the tears fall. After a long time, Kane leaned forward and took my hands gently in hers. Her hands were warm. "And as for the other races of the conquered," she said, "we have come in peace. We will ask to join your council. We will share what we have learned in the Hollow. We will help protect the smaller species who have been bullied by the Krellins. We will not rule, we will serve. That is our way now." She smiled. "And we have brought you one more thing, Doctor, something we would like you to see." She nodded to Daniel, who had been standing quietly by the door. He stepped forward and held out a small, polished wooden box. "Open it," Claire whispered. With shaking hands, I took the box. I opened the lid. Inside, resting on soft blue cloth, was a chessboard. But not just any chessboard. The chessboard, the one John and I had made from scrap metal on that ship all those cycles ago. The pieces were dented. The wood was old. A small spot of dark stain where I had once spilled broth was still there. "We found it," Daniel said softly, "in your old ship's archives. Your captain kept it after you left the service. Your grandchildren gave it to a museum. We purchased it last year. We have been polishing it carefully every evening for months, waiting." I lifted one of the small pieces in my trembling fingers. A knight. John had carved it himself with a broken knife. I held it to my chest. I wept. Admiral Kane stood up slowly. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Welcome home, Dr. Wren," she said. "Welcome home." Outside the window, far below, my world turned on through the black, and above it, 1 billion people waited to meet me. The days that followed were unlike any I had ever known. Admiral Kane kept every promise she had made to me. The humans did not attack. They did not threaten. They simply arrived, as quietly and as firmly as a sunrise, at every major station in conquered space, and they began to speak. They spoke to kings. They spoke to counselors. They spoke to judges and generals and traders. They bowed politely. They offered gifts. They asked with perfect respect to be granted a seat at the galactic table. No one said no. How could anyone say no? Their ships blotted out stars. Their technology was 3 centuries ahead of ours. And yet their words were gentle, and their eyes were kind, and their hands, when they shook ours, were steady. The conquered, the great old tired empire I had served all my life, opened its doors to them within a month. The vote was not even close. The humans took their seats on every council, and they listened more than they spoke. When they did speak, it was always to ask a question or to offer help. Roads were built on worlds that had been begging for roads for centuries. Medicine appeared on planets that had been sick for generations. Schools opened for children who had never owned a book. I watched it all happen from a quiet home the humans built for me, high on a hillside overlooking the capital. They gave me servants who did not act like servants, only like friends. They gave me doctors who knew my species better than my own doctors ever had. My old aches faded. My breathing grew easier. My tired eyes grew brighter. They could not give me youth again, but they gave me something close to comfort, and I was grateful. Meanwhile, far away, the other part of their plan unfolded. I watched it on the news screens along with the rest of the galaxy. The great human fleet, the Armada that had darkened my sky, divided into many smaller fleets, and each fleet moved toward a Krellin world. They did not fire warning shots. They did not make demands. They simply arrived. And every Krellin defense, everywhere, shut itself off. It turned out that for the last 20 years, human agents had been quietly inside every Krellin network, every Krellin ship, every Krellin weapon. They had taught themselves to speak perfect Krellin. They had built friendships, opened businesses, married into families. They had become, in 100 quiet ways, part of the Krellin world. And then, on one chosen day, all of them turned the same key at once. Every Krellin weapon went silent. Every Krellin warship stopped in space. Every Krellin general found that his orders no longer worked. The Krellin Empire fell in one afternoon, without a single shot being fired. It was the most peaceful conquest any living historian had ever seen. And then, just as Cain had promised, the humans began to build. They fed the hungry first. They built clean water systems. They opened clinics. They arrested only those leaders who had given the order to destroy Earth, and they placed them on trial before a fair court made up of judges from a dozen species. Those trials lasted a full year. Every witness was heard. Every piece of evidence was shown. When it was over, the guilty were sentenced not to die, but to spend the rest of their lives teaching young Krellins about the cost of cruelty. A strange punishment, perhaps, but it worked. Slowly, over the years, the poison in Krellin culture began to drain. Meanwhile, my own life became stranger and richer than I had ever imagined. I became, without asking for it, the most famous being in the galaxy, the alien who saved a human. That was what they called me. Children sang songs about me, schools taught my name, traders carved my face into charms and carried them for luck. I did not like the attention, but I accepted it because I understood what it meant. I was a symbol, not of myself, but of something bigger. I was a reminder that kindness matters, that small choices grow into great forests. That you never know, when you help one stranger, whose life you may be saving, or whose world you may be starting. I tried to use this strange fame for good. I spoke to councils. I asked that more worlds be given clean water. I asked that more species be invited into the conquered. I asked that old enemies be given the chance to speak to one another again. People listened. People agreed. I was amazed every day at how much one old doctor could do if his voice was respected. And every evening, without fail, Admiral Cain or her granddaughter would come to my home and share a meal with me. They taught me about Earth. They showed me pictures of oceans I would never swim in and forests I would never walk through. They taught me old songs. They brought me old books, translated just for me. And when the meal was done, we would bring out John's chessboard and we would play. They were better than me. Of course they were. Humans had been playing chess for thousands of years, but they let me win sometimes with small, careful mistakes that I pretended not to see. I loved them for that. Then, one evening in my 96th cycle, Admiral Cain came to my home with a very quiet look on her face. "Doctor," she said, "there is one more thing I would like to show you, if you are willing." "Of course," I said. She led me to a ship, not a grand one this time, just a small, comfortable shuttle. We flew for 2 days, through the strange, folded paths humans used to cross great distances. I slept for most of the journey. When I woke, we were approaching a planet. It was green and blue. It had oceans. It had clouds. It had mountains and forests and long, curving coasts. It looked alive. It looked beautiful. It looked like a place where things grew. "Where are we?" I whispered. Cain's eyes were wet. "This is New Earth, Doctor, the first of the 3 worlds we settled in the Hollow. This is where my grandfather was born. This is where your story was first taught to children and where your name is sung every evening at sunset. We would like, if you agree, for you to spend your last years here, in our home, as our elder." I stared out the window. "I would be honored," I said. The ship descended through soft clouds. Below me I saw cities built of white stone and living wood. I saw great parks. I saw rivers. I saw children, thousands of them, running across green fields with colorful flags in their hands. I saw elders sitting on porches, drinking tea in the evening sun. I saw life. Full, rich, growing life. My ship landed in a great open square in the heart of the largest city. As I stepped down, leaning on Daniel's strong arm, I saw that the square was full of people. Not hundreds, not thousands, millions. They stretched as far as my eyes could see. They stood in perfect, respectful silence. And then, all together, they knelt. A whole city, a whole world, kneeling for a tired old doctor who had once refused to look away. I cried again. I had been crying a lot these last years. Kane walked me up to a small raised platform. She handed me a microphone. She nodded gently. "They want to hear from you, Doctor. They have waited their whole lives." I was not a great speaker. I had no grand speech prepared. My hands shook. My voice was thin. But I held the microphone and I spoke from my old heart. "My friends," I said softly, and my words echoed across the square. "I am only one old doctor. I did a small thing long ago. I did what any of us should have done. I saw a dying stranger and I chose not to turn my face away. That is all. That is all I did." I paused because my throat was tight. "But you took that small thing and you made it into something bigger than I ever imagined. You took my single quiet choice and you carried it through the dark and you made it the foundation of a whole civilization. That was not me. That was you. I only struck the first spark. You built the fire." I wiped my eyes. "So I ask you, all of you, to remember what this story really means. It is not about me. It is about the kind of people you became. People who chose in your hardest hour to build rather than burn. People who chose when you held the sword of power to open your hand. Do not ever lose that. Do not ever tell yourselves that you are strong because you are sharp. You are strong because you are gentle. And gentleness in this cruel galaxy is the rarest strength of all." I bowed slowly, as best as my old back would allow. "Thank you, my children. Thank you for returning. Thank you for making John proud. Thank you for letting one old alien see what kindness can grow into when it is cared for and remembered and passed from hand to hand across the dark." When I finished, the silence held for a long breath. Then the cheering began. Not wild cheering, soft cheering, the cheering of millions of hands clapping together in a slow, grateful rhythm. It rolled across the city like a warm tide. I stood there, small and tired, letting it wash over me. I lived on New Earth for 4 more cycles. They were the best years of my life. I lived in a little house beside a river. I had a garden of flowers that humans had brought from 100 worlds. I had visitors every day. Old friends from the conquered flew in to see me. Young humans came to ask me questions about John. Children drew me pictures and left them on my doorstep. Daniel and Claire came every week, bringing food they had cooked themselves. Admiral Kane retired and came to live on the next hill over, so we could play chess on warm afternoons beneath the blue sky. I learned to love human food. I learned to love human music. I learned to love the strange, stubborn, warm way humans live. I watched the galaxy change. The conquered, once tired and slow, grew strong again. The Krellin worlds, once cruel, became peaceful. The smaller species, once bullied, stood tall. New trade routes opened. New medicines spread. New languages were learned. The humans did not rule. They simply showed up everywhere doing hard, good work, and the galaxy quietly rearranged itself around their example. And every year, on the day I had first saved John, a festival was held across every human world. The Day of the Doctor, they called it. Children gave each other small gifts. Strangers helped strangers. People forgave old debts. A galaxy learned once a year to be a little kinder, because an old alien had once been a little kinder, a long time ago. On my final day, I knew it was coming. I felt it the way old people do, like a door softly opening somewhere down the hall. I asked for my bed to be moved out onto the porch so I could see the river. I asked for Admiral Kane and Daniel and Claire and a few of my own grandchildren who had come to visit me on New Earth for the occasion. They gathered around me in the warm afternoon light. A soft breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere, a bird was singing. Kane sat beside me. She had brought John's chessboard. "One last game, Doctor," she asked softly. "One last game," I agreed. We played slowly. My hands barely moved the pieces. She was patient. I made many mistakes, but just before the end she leaned forward and whispered, "Doctor, I think you can win this one." I looked at the board. She had made a gentle, quiet mistake, the same kind of mistake she always made when she was letting me win. I moved my queen. "Checkmate," I said. She smiled and her eyes were wet. "Well played, sir, very well played." I leaned back on the pillows. I felt very tired, but I also felt very light. My grandchildren held my hands. Daniel held my other hand. Claire smoothed my silver hair. "Vectel," Kane said softly, using my personal name for the first time in all our years, "is there anything you would like us to do after you are gone?" I thought for a long moment. My voice was a whisper now. "Yes," I said. "Remember him, remember John. Remember the small, scarred man who carried your whole world in his one good hand. Do not let him fade just because I am gone. He was the one who was brave. I was only the one who happened to be standing there. Keep his name alive. That is all I ask." "We will," Daniel whispered. "Every child, every year, forever." I closed my eyes. I felt the sun on my face. I heard the river. I heard the birds. I felt, deep under my old ribs, my 3 tired hearts beating their last gentle rhythm. I thought of John. I thought of a small pod drifting in the dark. I thought of a young doctor who had said no to his captain. I thought of all the quiet years I had spent waiting, wondering if I had been a fool to believe. I had not been a fool. I had been a gardener. I had planted one small seed of kindness in a cold place. And somehow, against every odd, against every wise prediction, that seed had grown into a forest that now covered the whole galaxy. My last thought, as I drifted away, was this: you never really know, when you save one life, how many lives you are truly saving. You never really know, when you choose kindness over fear, what great distant doors that one choice might quietly open. You only know that you must choose it anyway, even when it seems small, even when it seems useless, even when every voice around you says to look the other way. Choose kindness. Always. Because somewhere out in the vast dark, there may be a stranger waiting for a hand to reach out. And that stranger may carry, hidden in his tight grip, the entire future of his people. I chose, and so did they. And so together we saved each other. The stars were waking up as the light left my eyes. I heard John's voice, clear and young, somewhere far away. "Well done, my friend," he said. "Well done." And then, gently, like a ship coming at last into harbor, I was home. The end.